So, imagine you could buy yourself a clone. Who would you clone and why? Yeah, I know what you're thinking, you dirty buggers. By the way, let me know your thoughts in the comments. In Duel, a terminally ill woman called Sarah, played superbly by Karen Gillan, decides to purchase a clone of herself to live on after her imminent death. Only problem is she ends up making a miraculous recovery. What follows is a dark satire as Sarah desperately struggles to decommission her clone, and then, perhaps bizarrely, has to train to fight her clone in a battle to the death. Duel has a very unique style, and if you can manage to tune into its frequency, then you are rewarded with a very satisfying watch. Genuine question, let me know in the comments, if you could send your past self a message beyond the obvious lottery numbers, what would you tell yourself? What if the message could only be sent 2 minutes into the past? Well, Beyond the Infinite 2 Minutes plays out this exact scenario. Sitting down to watch the film, the first thing you might think is, this looks a bit amateurish, and in a way you would be correct, as this film was shot entirely on an iPhone, but its real technical feat is its 70-minute runtime appears as one long shot. But don't let its low budget fool you, because this time travel film directed by Junta Yamaguchi punches well above its weight in coins. It's a low stakes, almost slapstick story with a small cast that infuses it with an infectious, super fun spirit. As the film progresses, the stakes become higher, but it always remains a whole lot of fun. A story about horse breeders trying to capture evidence of an unidentified flying object haunting the desert skies might sound like a fairly standard sci-fi film, but Jordan Peele is no standard director. Nope is Peele's third film following his horror hits Get Out and Us. Just like his first films, Nope is infused with a sense of foreboding and dread. Although I wouldn't classify it as straight out horror, it is a film that crawls under your skin and makes you feel uncomfortable, with a Close Encounters / Jaws vibe, all while containing deeper themes around humanity and capitalism. Although this film was a critical hit, it had mixed audience reviews. Whatever you take, there is no doubting its excellence in its visual effects and cinematography, and Daniel Kaluuya is the star among a sea of fantastic performances. If you watched Spielberg's AI, did it make you cry? If not, After Yang might be the film that draws out your unexpected emotional connection to an artificial life form. Writer-director Kogonada's vision follows parents Jake and Kira as they try to repair their adopted daughter's android sibling named Yang. But this is no sci-fi spectacle. Kogonada's cerebral film is a thoughtful meditation on humanity's evolving relationship with technology and what it essentially means to live and be human. This incredibly poignant film features an outstanding performance from Colin Farrell and is a glimpse of what is very likely coming in our own near future. The original Black Panther was an absolute beast of a film. It wasn't just that the film joined the exclusive ranks of the $1 Billion Club, but it was a cultural phenomenon, especially among the black community. The pressure on its sequel Black Panther Wakanda Forever was therefore always going to be immense, and with Chadwick Boseman's death there was suddenly a whole new level of burden for director Ryan Coogler to manage. Fortunately, the film managed to capture much of the high stakes of the original while still honouring the legacy of the late Chadwick Boseman and his character King T'Challa. Personally though, I felt a little bit conflicted by the film. Its storyline with Namor and the people of Talokan felt like a rehash of DC's Aquaman, with CGI effects overwhelming the screen. However, what elevated this film was how well they explored the intimate grief of the loss of a son and a brother, which gave the film an incredibly heartfelt, emotional core. Hello there. Good to see you still here. This channel is currently demonetized, so it'd really help me if you could click like. Please also consider subscribing for more content. Now, back to the video. Okay, so this one's going to be perhaps a little bit controversial. If you watched Ryan Reynolds' incredible escapades in last year's Free Guy, then you know exactly what to expect from his latest vehicle, the Adam Project, namely just a huge load of fun. Not every science fiction film needs to think deeply about things like the nature of humanity and the role of technology in our lives. Some films are just there to thoroughly entertain, and this is pure popcorn entertainment. Time-travelling jets, Mark Ruffalo, getting help from your younger self to save the future, this film has it all, and importantly it manages to successfully capture the fun of a mid-80s family blockbuster. So how many dark and gritty Batman reboots do we really need? Well, it turns out the answer was one more. The Batman is a film I had some mixed feelings about. In particular, the film is essentially a detective noir movie. However, it turns out that Batman is actually a pretty poor detective who is strung along by the Riddler at every move, which by the way was one of the most engaging realistic portrayals of the antagonistic to date. However, visually the film is just astonishing. Gotham has never looked more resplendently seedy, with evils lurking in every shadow, and I love the more realistic depiction of Batman with his almost DIY-esque gadgets. This Batman felt the most real of any other Batman there has been in the past, and I love that the film wasn't afraid to take its time to let the characters breathe. And the raw energy of the Batmobile chase sequence is simply a must-watch. If there are awards for the franchise that has spawned the most disastrous sequels, then the Predator films would probably get a Lifetime Achievement Award. So when it was announced that the latest film would be a prequel featuring the Predator taking on a Comanche woman, the adverse reactions were pretty brutal. Fortunately, those initial gut reactions were thoroughly wrong. Prey is set in the North American Great Plains during the 18th century, and it is by a large stretch the best Predator film since the 1987 original. The setting allows the film to go back to basics in a battle of wits, one human versus one predator. Great performances, a central character that you root for, a ruthless predator, and some fantastic action sequences. Prey has them all. 13 years is a hell of a long time to wait for the sequel to the biggest movie of all time. But James Cameron spent that time doing what he does best, developing new technology and fine-tuning his equipment so that every single one of his brushstrokes representing his vision could be perfectly realised on the big screen. Avatar: The Way of Water was worth every second of the wait. It is simply stunning, imaginative, and packed with details. It might not be perfect, with flaws similar to the 2009 original, namely a relatively weak story, but a Cameron film feels like no other. It is the biggest advert you can have for big cinema, and it is a must watch on the biggest and baddest screen you can find, and that final hour is simply some of the most exhilarating movie making you'll have ever seen. And the number one sci-fi film of 2022 is Moonfall. Nah, I'm just kidding. Of course, it is Everything Everywhere All at Once. It's absurd, it's joyful, it's full of action, it's zany, it's meditative, it's hilarious. Everything Everywhere All at Once is just every one of these things. But what binds all of these elements together is a beautiful emotional core that will have you thinking about the meaning of your own lives and your own relationships. It is an absolute masterpiece, and there has never been a film like it. I absolutely refuse to tell you anything more about it because it is best seen with zero expectations and a fully open mind. It's a cinematic experience like no other, and for me not only takes the crown of the best sci-fi movie of 2022, but the best film of any genre outright. Please go and watch.